Welcome to this episode of Pen to Paper Press Podcast. I'm Cindy Kochis. There is a backstory weaved into each book we write. To explore the creative process, I am sitting down with authors, writers, editors, publishers, and an array of creative souls to have a conversation centered on how they develop their stories to completing their works of art. Each episode is an opportunity for us to explore mindsets, pearls of wisdom, and the experiences that began our journey as an author from the moment we put pen to paper. Stephanie Miller is a writing and spiritual growth coach, author, and speaker. Her coaching ministry focuses on helping individuals grow spiritually by recognizing that the creative process is also a spiritual process. Stephanie has authored and co-authored several books, including her book, The Butterfly Blueprint, How to Renew Your Mind and Grow Your Faith. It is a joy to have you join me here in the Pen to Paper Press podcast studio for a conversation centered on writing.
Yes, thank you so much, Cindy. I am so honored to be here and so excited to talk with you and share my experience.
Well, we had a pre-interview conversation a while back. And ever since then, it was just like, it was such a fun conversation. And it's supposed to be a 15-minute conversation just to kind of get to know each other and ask questions and so forth. And if I remember right, I think we were like talking for a very long time. So I'm truly looking forward to the flow of this conversation. Butterflies signify growth and personal change for many individuals. And the first time I read the title to your book, The Butterfly Blueprint, I found myself wondering how your book explores the stages of a butterfly's life in comparison to, like our personal growth.
Yes, absolutely. That is such a great question. And that is the premise of the book from a spiritual growth standpoint. So we have kind of that egg, that potential, but it hasn't quite hatched yet. So from spiritual or even personal growth. So from the egg, you have this potential, but it's there, but it hasn't hatched, hasn't started yet. Then you become that caterpillar. So I always think of the book, and my daughter loves this book, The Hungry, Hungry Caterpillar, where the caterpillar is just feasting on everything. And it's just, I liken it to kind of the perspective of the world, like what the world tells us. So the caterpillar is hungry, looking for things, trying to fill itself up to find that purpose and that fulfillment. And then from the caterpillar, there is this idea of a limited perspective. Caterpillars cannot fly. Butterflies can. So I look at kind of the caterpillar stage as this limited perspective component that we only see what's in front of us. And it's not until we've undergone that cocoon and that metamorphosis and that transformation that we are able to really experience life and see it from a whole new perspective. And then just to kind of keep on into the stages of the caterpillar to butterfly life cycle. From the caterpillar, we're in that cocoon. Man, did I tell you this book released during 2020, during COVID? Everyone was just, we were walking in a state of uncertainty. We were walking in a state of just hopelessness. And there wasn't a lot of hope. And many of us felt suffocated and isolated. And we were in a cocoon. And COVID, quarantine or not, like many of us walk around every day feeling that same way, isolated, stuck, things like that. So there's really this idea of like entering this cocoon, this hard time, this pressing time, this suffocating time is so necessary for our own personal and spiritual growth and transformation. Because once we come out of the cocoon, we're the butterfly, where we have that whole new vantage point we can see. So really the whole book is about going from a caterpillar to a butterfly from a spiritual perspective, what that looks like practically, and also in just your everyday situations and relationships with others. So that's kind of like the summary of A to Z, where the book begins and where it ends. And just the whole tagline for the book is live transformed, and what it means to live from that mindset of a butterfly. Because so many of us, really, whether we admit it or understand it or not, we tend to be the transformed butterfly, but still try to move as we are a caterpillar. We're still acting as we are still our caterpillar. So it's really this idea that you are no longer a caterpillar, you are a transformed butterfly, given wings to fly, given your purpose, given just everything that you need in order to fulfill your full potential.
Wow. And there is so much packed in that.
Yeah, there is.
So when did you decide that I have to write this book?
Yeah, so that is a whole nother story in and of itself. So I started this book and it had nothing to do with a butterfly. Nothing. Okay. Absolutely nothing. It was like a 5 keys to transformation and growth. No butterfly in it whatsoever. So started the book and I got a little bit stuck. I was hitting like a word count and I was stuck and it wasn't flowing well. And then shortly after I found out I was pregnant. So then I realized that I was going to have a baby that year, but it wasn't going to be a book baby. It was going to be an actual baby. But I had this sense of calm and peace that when it was time to pick it back up, that God would let me know, and that I would have like the faith and the ability to be able to do that. So after I have the baby, I take some time off, and then the following year, which would be the beginning of 2020, things just align and opportunities, open up for me, and God just really reveals to me, okay, it's time to pick back up that book. So then when I picked up the book at that point, that's when this whole metaphor of the butterfly came to light. And I struggled with it too, because the name of my coaching ministry is Butterfly Beginnings. So I thought, well, that's way too obvious. That's way too obvious. But the more I really pressed into it and the more I leaned to it, the more personal relevance and significance butterflies have in my life. I knew it was just kind of like that kismet synchronicity connection that was happening. So the butterfly really was transformed in my book as it related to what these 5 keys of growth and transformation look like.
Interesting that the butterfly concept wasn't even a part of the original. And I love how when it even happens when my writing projects, but it's so interesting to hear so many authors say that, this is where, when I started writing the project, that this is where it was going to go. And in somewhere in, whether it's the writing process, the editing process, or, the pause and then you reorganize, it's so interesting to see how the progression of the book takes a shift. It's like pivot or plot twist, Yeah. What's the saying? If you don't like how things are going, yell plot twist, and things are supposed to change. Yeah. Sometimes I'm not sure I'd want to yell that, but anyways, so I find it so interesting that that's exactly what happened with you, was that you were looking for it to be one way and the finished project is completely different.
Yeah.
So then, was this a book that did you just, I guess, where did the content come from? Is this from your coaching practice, or is this like from your experiences, or is it like a fabric of, excuse me if I can say the word, a fabric of both, where it's all weaved in together?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it actually is a combination of both. I get very personal, very transparent, very vulnerable in my story, and in the book content, because one of the things I firmly believe in is that our transformation emerges from our transparency. So as a result of that, that's how we grow and transform, is when we stop trying to hide or pretend we're someone we're not, but really just come out fully and completely on who we are. So the 5 keys, I think where I got the original idea of the 5 keys is I did give a couple talks around the 5 keys. So I thought, oh, okay, well, I'll just, transfer that into a book and then away we go. But as we know, it didn't quite work like that. And thankfully it didn't. I mean, I think the way that the book is and the way that everything came up with the butterfly, it makes so much more sense. But from just personal experience of applying, those 5 concepts that I still do mention in the book, but in a way that kind of shows what it means to kind of have that potential, to what it means to be looking to the wrong things to satisfy and fill us, and then what it means to kind of prepare ourselves for the cocoon or like that hard time, and then kind of come out transformed on the other side. So it really is a combination of those personal stories. And yeah, I have, friends, my husband's coworkers have bought the book, and I'm like, oh man, like there's some stuff in there, and you forget about it. But the other thing I often say is that the need for us to share our story is greater than the need for us to stay guarded. So I try to really live that out, that when I share my story, it's not about me. And I know that you and I relate to that 100%. And so it really is just this idea, like it might feel uncomfortable and weird for me, but I try to also tell myself that the more uncomfortable and weird it feels to start sharing yourself, the more, number one, it is needed by others. And the more, number one, it is you're needed to do it so you can continue to grow.
Very true, because we do, when we're writing, and especially if it involves being vulnerable and sharing our life lessons and those pearls of wisdom, that we've learned along the way, it does bring a sense of vulnerability that it's like, ooh, do I really want to share that? And so I'm sure when it came time for you to put it out there on the market and then find out, like, your husband's reading it, your neighbor is reading it, your in-laws, your great Aunt Martha, whoever. And that happens a lot with those that are writing a memoir. So is this more of a memoir than a like self-help type? How do you classify your book?
Yeah, I would say it is more of a self-help type, with just kind of these personal antidotes thrown in, because I do provide kind of these steps, these action steps at the end of each chapter, as well as additional discussion questions. And then, of course, since it's faith-based, there's a ton of scripture references and everything like that. And feedback I've received is like, Stephanie, this is more like a study Bible. You should see everything I have highlighted in here. Like this is crazy. So I would classify it more as like a self-help, but just using those examples and those experiences from my own life to say, hey, here I was at this point in my life, and then here I am now. So just looking at that to demonstrate that difference.
So then this brings up the whole topic of the inner critic, because again, we're talking about that vulnerability, and we have that voice. We have the two voices that, well, we have a half a dozen actually, truth be told, but we have the two strongest ones that are like, yeah, go for it, do it. Your story needs to be told. This is so important. Your words have power. Somebody needs to read your story. But yet then you have on the other side of that pendulum, you have that voice that's like going, what are you doing, Stephanie? Do you really want to share that? So how do you get through? Well, how did you get through that inner critic telling you, do it and don't do it, and all of, all those other juicy bits of information our inner critic loves to share with us.
Yes, absolutely. So, man, it's challenging. You can sit here, and I talk to my clients too, and I say, the more resistance and opposition you feel towards going through this and writing this and persevering and showing up to the page, the more that your story needs to be told and you need to write it down, which is helpful to hear, but we don't always internalize it. So it's really kind of a slippery slope of, listening to the inner critic, like hearing what she has to say, but not like judging those thoughts or allowing them to dictate your reactions and your responses. I think it might have been Brene Brown or someone that had talked about fear in your car with you, but not allowing fear even in the passenger seat, or especially not in the driver's seat. But just fear is kind of riding in the car with you. There's that acknowledgement, that understanding that those imposter feelings are going to come up, and every writer struggles with them. So reminding ourselves that everyone, like the famous authors, we're talking all of the highly acclaimed, well-known authors, struggle with imposter syndrome. So that's this idea, the more that you feel like you are not good enough, the more that you need to kind of like press through and persevere that. So, when you're in the middle, and I'm actually in the middle of trying to kind of muddle through this impostery, like uncomfortable muckiness right now, not necessarily book related, but more coaching related. And so this idea, like, I can't see the other side, but I know that I'm just going to keep going and take one step after the other after the other. For me, writing is not about a specific outcome. Writing is about an obedience and a call that I am committing myself to.
So then, do you write on a regular schedule, or is it, because you're a mother of 2 young children, so are you writing when you can, or are you writing on a schedule?
So I currently write every day in kind of the morning pages, like Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, kind of this journaling free write. I love doing it in the morning. So I write my morning pages pretty consistently throughout every day. And then when it comes to actual writing, again, full transparency, I talk about it, I'm going to model it. I have not been as consistent in my own writing projects as I would like. I find, and actually interestingly enough, my morning pages just this morning revealed this to me. I find I'm more comfortable kind of in the background helping other people. And so this whole idea of stepping forward, and then of course, we're reminding ourselves now that vulnerability and nakedness component that writing these personal topics and experiences have you really relive. I've just been trying to fill it in with other things. So I really feel at this season, and kind of heading into the next season as baby number 3 is coming in a couple of months, that it's really going to be about creating space and making room to allow myself to show up and just start writing. I mean, I think one of the things we tell ourselves is we need an outline, and we need a formal outline and a structured outline before we can get going, before we start writing. And really the idea is like you have what's on your heart, and then you just start writing what's on your heart. So one of my goals, which clearly I'm letting all of your listeners hold me accountable for, is to incorporate more structured me writing for the next book, because I know that I have that idea for the next book. I have the title for the next book. I just haven't been consistent on sitting down and hammering it out, because I've been dealing with toddlers and pregnancy and all the above. So real life distractions. But as I think any writer probably can relate to, there's this call and like this magnetizingness, if that'll be my word, magnetizingness that just draws you back to writing and draws you back to the message and the story that is on your heart. So I feel like that really needs to be something that I sit down and I commit to.
I like how you share that life happens, and it's nice to know that you're honoring your motherhood, because that is a very, very important role for you and your children, and of course for Dad too.
Yeah.
And you're also honoring your writing. And I have followed Julia Cameron for, oh geez, I can't even tell you for how long. For probably since the Artist's Way came out, because I have oh geez, quite a few of her books. And the one that really set a lot for me was The Artist's Way at Work. Because at that point I was in a work environment that was fulfilling, it was stressful, but I really adored the people I worked with. I had some good friendships out of there, and of course I had a few that it was like, yeah, go away, but it was like, that's work though.
Yeah.
And anyways, so the morning pages, getting back on topic, is a great outlet, because we can use that time to brain dump, get our thoughts out, plan our day, organize whatever it is that we need to organize. But for me, that's where I find where I write more of the ideas for the book. Yeah. Because I have several that I've been contributing to, and so forth. This isn't about me, so I won't go in there. I won't fall down that rabbit hole. I won't send myself head over heels down that rabbit hole. But anyways, so I appreciate and I wanted to acknowledge that, congratulations on taking that time for yourself, because it's so easy when you have, you have the household stuff, you have your personal stuff, you have the kids stuff, you have your husband's stuff, you have life happening all around you, and taking that personal time is so vital, because it's so easy to lose ourselves if we don't.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. I don't know how I was before morning pages. I just know I can't imagine myself now without morning pages. It is my sanity. It is everything that I need. It is the to-do list some days. It is a brain dump. It is, emotional. It is it's all over the place, but it's so needed, especially when I start to transition into working on the next book and what that looks like, and brainstorming, because I need that logic brain to have its space so the creative brain can come in and really start, doing what it needs to do. So yeah, I appreciate that. It was, I fought it because I wasn't sure what it was going to look like in my season of life, but I'm so glad that I persevered through it. And just continue to persevere through it. Growth does not happen in our comfort zones as much as we want it to. I would personally love to be able to be comfortable and grow. Yeah.
I'm right there with you. Oh gosh, yes.
No. It just doesn't, and I'm going through the book now, and I'm halfway through the book, and I really see like another whole almost caterpillar to butterfly transformation coming out in my creative space, in my creative way. So man, it's just the idea that we've never really arrived, and there's always growing and learning and developing that we can do professionally as writers and personally as people, but they can't be separated. Like they're merging and they're together. And that's the beauty of life. Honestly, I think we try to compartmentalize things and have them separate, but really, I talk about creativity and writing as a spiritual process. And And it really is, it's tapping into another part of yourself on a whole nother level, and being comfortable navigating the uncomfortable, which is a whole nother topic.
Yes, it is. And, and part of being in that state of uncomfortableness is that's when we get stuck.
Yes.
And that's when we sit there and we look at the blank screen or the pen to the blank sheet of paper, and it's like, do something, come on, a word, just type a word, write a word, come on. So, is there something, for some people it's just journaling about something else or doodling or doing a different type of artwork. So for you, when you're in that process and you're in that stuckness and you're just like, come on, just give me a word. Whoops. Sorry about that. I will see if I can edit that text message coming throughout. So how do you find to be the easiest way to become unstuck and move through that muck and the yuck and the yick?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I feel like there's so many layers to our stuckness. There's kind of the stuck creatively, in terms of we just, the idea that we thought we had is no longer flowing, like just a lack of flow. And I think at that point, it's perfectly acceptable and to take a break and step away from it. I'm not saying you need to have a baby and then come back and write your book like I did. But it's just to take a break and just allow the thoughts and ideas and the creativity to emerge itself without trying to force it. I would say that if it's a repeat occurrence, that something deeper might be going on, maybe emotionally or personally, or there's some kind of block or wall that you need to kind of lean into and press through. So for me, that looks like a lot of prayer. That looks like a lot of journal writing, and prompts. I also work with kind of, overall themes of what I desire and just a 1 or 2 word prompt, and then just start writing anything and everything that I can, on that. And knowing that that's just kind of one thing, one thought will lead to another, will lead to another, will lead to another. And it might not make total sense, and there might be some rabbit trails in there, but there will be some nuggets that are necessary with that particular topic or that particular area. But I would say it's kind of like when you're trying to open up a locked door, and the door is actually locked. So you can't really open the door if it's locked. But what you can do is you can step aside, take some time. I love the idea of stepping into something else creative, taking a walk in nature. If it's nice outside, if it's not nice outside and you love the rain, walk in the rain, whatever you need to do, but just taking a step away from the pressure, the computer, the pen, the paper, like all of that. And then just allowing that insight and that creative inspiration to come itself. For me, it happens in the shower, when I'm trying to go to bed, when I'm driving, doing laundry, all of those things. But it's when you're not trying to force it, when you're not trying to really, open up that door, but you just allow the door to be unlocked itself. So then you can start walking into the next thing.
I like how you say that. Yes. I like the analogy of a locked door because that's exactly what it is. Yeah. It's, for many people, they consider it like a boulder in the road. Mm-hmm. And, they're trying to figure out how to walk around or get around the boulder. But like you said, if it's there and you can't get that door to open, and it's a door that you keep, coming up against, and, that same door handle, maybe the paint of coat on the door is different, but it's the same door handle. Yeah. digging deeper and finding out, okay, what really is, what is the root of this? So I like that you brought that up and shared that, because that is something that, we don't want to admit that, oh, I'm here again. Oh, do I have to be here? Yeah, we do. Because there's something in there that needs to be acknowledged, to be answered as such. So I thank you for that great analogy. I'll be using that instead of a boulder or other things that my creative mind comes rattling up to. So is there, with the writing and the editing and publishing, and again, you mentioned that you were working on another book right now, is there a process that it's like, oh, I can't wait to do this part of, the whole process of getting a book published? What is that one thing that's like, oh, yes, I'm doing it?
Yes. For me, I don't want to market myself. I don't want to put myself out there. I just want to write. I just want to write. I don't even enjoy the self-editing. Maybe that's probably secondary, but I'm in terms of my favorite part, it's just that first initial draft. It's just getting it all out. I encourage myself and I encourage my clients as well to just get it all out and don't self-edit as you are writing, especially that first draft. I have people that work on these very structured formal outlines, and that's fine. I think outlines and a little bit of structure are helpful, but I don't think that you want to stifle your creativity or the words that you are wanting to put out just because you think it doesn't fit necessarily. It might not fit in that particular area of your book or whatever you're working on in the writing, but that doesn't mean that it won't be a fit later. I will say also, it's kind of weird, but I also enjoyed the part where you get to the point where you think everything is terrible and you want to just kind of like highlight like pages and pages and pages and delete. Because I found personally, as well as kind of in my clients' lives as well, that's where the breakthrough is. It's like when that imposter syndrome just starts hitting hard and you think everything is just terrible and you don't even know what you were thinking, like don't delete it. Or if you're going to delete it, just start a blank document, but leave that other one there. It's that idea that you have something good and then you can just start picking those nuggets and the content that will just draw everything together. So it's the writing and then drawing and combining everything that really it makes my heart sing. The publishing, the marketing, all of that, not so much, but the initial writing of message from here on your heart, message from here in your mind, and just getting it out there. Writing is such a beautiful thing when you don't try to censor yourself as you're writing.
Interesting that so when you're writing your first draft, you don't go back and look at it and kind of like, oh, maybe I need to rearrange this. You're just writing and you don't stop and look back at it until you're done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
I feel like in terms of chapter content, I don't even really organize chapters until I have just kind of those prompts, this idea like, oh, a chapter could be this, but I don't know if it's going to be in the beginning or the end or the middle, and just write on that. With the book, The Butterfly Blueprint, there was a little bit more structure because I had those 5 keys, but really those 5 keys, awareness, acceptance, authenticity, accountability, and action, those are all writing prompts in and of themselves. So I can write on what accountability is, what authenticity is. And then from there, start drawing and pulling and connecting it to make more structured, organized sense.
Okay. So then when you've got that first draft, that's when you sit down and you pull it apart as far as, okay, this is chapter this chapter goes up to the front. This one kind of sneaks back to the back half and so forth. So it sounds like in a way you use what I term a loose outline, where it's there, but it's not strict. You give yourself that freedom to be flexible and if need be, adjust.
Otherwise I feel like you can be really hard on yourself if you are not writing those qualifications that you think are meeting that particular chapter or the content. And I also think that you could miss something. I feel like this has happened to me where if I try to focus on writing too specifically, I'll have a great statement, but I think it doesn't fit. So then I'll just like highlight and delete it. But there was a reason that came from my mind and then it was typed out on paper. So I always just go by the lines, whatever it needs to come out, comes out. You just show up, let it flow. And then you start kind of connecting and organizing.
Kind of like what we said at the very beginning of the podcast, which is to, give ourselves that room for quote unquote the plot twist.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, life throws us a bajillion plot twists a day, let's be honest. And it doesn't do ourselves any good. This is not what I planned. This is not what I had in mind. But you just have to kind of roll with it and go with it. Because we only have so much control, or we only have so much predictability in our lives. And I think the same thing goes for writing. You only know just this loose idea or this message in your head, but then 9 times out of 10, it takes on a whole new spin. And you just start to look at the writing project in a whole new way. Typically better than what your original idea is, but this idea of just kind of surrendering and letting go and letting it flow. And I know I keep saying that, but those 2 words rhyme, so we're just going to go with it. Surrender, let go, let it flow.
I love it. That's great. Well, and look at how different your book would be had you stuck with the original plan. It wouldn't have been a butterfly. That wasn't even a consideration till you picked it up after, the birth of your child. So, it allowing it to metamorphose. I have a hard time with the word metamorphosize. Kind of sort of said it. Kind of.
Yeah.
It evolved. I'll word it that way.
Yeah.
So then with you mentioned that the promoting and the marketing is not something you enjoy at all. Have you found a way for yourself to make it less of a daunting task? Because in all of the conversations I've had on this podcast, I think there's really been one person who really fully enjoyed, like you could see it on their face that they enjoyed the promoting and the marketing. And it's because she's a PR person. That's what her role is. This was like playtime for her. So did you find any way to make it less of a daunting task for you to market your book?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think for me, I enjoy helping others. So I am an Enneagram 2, if anyone's familiar with the Enneagram. So I am a helper and a nurturer. So my book, the why behind my book is to help other people. And so really I look at when I share the book, I'm not sharing, hey, look at me, look what I did, pat myself on the back. It really is about, there's a message in here that I think can help you and I think you can benefit from. You need to realize that you are not alone in your struggles and your insecurities and your worries that you are feeling and experiencing. Whether it's I've walked through what you've been through, or, I can relate on so many levels. Here's what helped me. Here's how you start to see a change in your perspective. So this idea, and again, full transparency, like I have that with my coaching business too. Like, here, look at me, coach with me, work with me. But it's really about, I have a solution to your problem. There is a need that is being met for the pain and the wall that you are coming up against and that you are experiencing. So what really helps me in terms of marketing and promoting myself, it's, I know you're struggling with this. I see you're struggling with this. Like, here is something that can help you. Here is something that can set you free from feeling the way that you feel, feeling the stuckness, or, the lack of clarity, consistency, or confidence for the writing, or even just a lack of purpose and meaning for the spiritual. So it's this idea of not looking at it that you're selling yourself, but you're selling the solution, or a remedy for their problem and their need.
You have thought well and hard about how to get yourself out there. It is very clear that you didn't just like, I'm not going to do this and not do it. You're like, okay, how can you've got that energizer rabbit energy that's like, okay, how am I going to get through this? What do I need to do? All right, let's go.
Yes.
So it doesn't sound like you're somebody who holds yourself back too much.
No, I don't. I'm a relatively goal-oriented person. So if I set my sights on something, I'll do it. And if I start feeling like the ickiness, resistance, that we do sometimes, I'll just kind of like push through it, persevere through it, and usually come out on the other side. It's this idea of how you bring it up, how you start promoting yourself in your book and selling yourself. And 9 times out of 10, people are like, I didn't know you were an author. I didn't know, anything about that. And I said, well, I don't, lead conversations with strangers. Hey, I'm Stephanie Miller. I'm an author. Nice to meet you. It's kind of leading into, I want to hear their story. I want to get to know them before I start sharing a little bit about, what the book can do and how it can help them. I had a new neighbor. We just moved here to where we are now about a year ago now. Had a new neighbor, and her and I were talking, and it was one of those impromptu, like, we were actually at the pool, not now, obviously it was last summer, but it was just one of those like organic conversations. So look for ways to bring up the book or your message or what you do organically, because you want to help the other person, not that you need to sell or promote. And there's a huge difference between trying to sell books just for numbers. But I look at the success of my book based on the life transformation that occurs after reading it.
Brilliant. That is a great perspective to hold on to and to share. Is what is that end goal? It's not what am I going to get out of it? What are you going to get out of it? I like that. I like that a lot. So is there a pearl of wisdom that you would share with somebody who is writing and they're in that cocoon and it just doesn't feel like anything is coming together, and it's before that cocoon cracks open and the wings spread out? What would be a pearl of wisdom you would give to them?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that we hit kind of that wall or have that cocoon multiple times in our lives. So I think the best way, instead of kind of leaning into it sometimes, is to kind of pull back and lean out, if you will, and try to see it from a different vantage point. I would say, instead of trying to do that exact same thing that just doesn't seem to be working, AKA trying to, elbow your way in a locked door, which is just really painful, to really kind of lean back and say, okay, why is this door locked? Why am I having problems? What emotions are coming up as I am trying to force this thing or trying to, fumble my way through. What have I done in the past? And what might be some other ways or solutions to work around it? So for the writer that is coming up with this opposition or just struggling, I would say take a break, do your journaling, do your brain dump, do your free writing, do it. Let that logic brain, that self-censor, that critic just have its way in your morning pages. So then you can make sure that you are able to just have this release creatively. Once you give the logic brain, the one that's used to being your taskmaster, the time and the place and the space, then it usually will play nice with your creative brain and give your creative brain that time and the place and the space that it needs to be able to process through.
Yes. And you have a visitor. Oh, and it's okay. So
she's grabbing a snack. So.
Oh, and how nice that she asks first. So.
Yeah.
Me, I would have been like, Mom's busy. Okay, I'm gonna go get my snack.
Yeah. I'm gonna go get this, whatever I want. Yeah.
So, anyways, so where can people find you on the internet?
Yes. So I have my website. It's butterflybeginnings.com. There's a hyphen, so it's butterfly-beginnings.com. I'm also active on Facebook and Instagram, and those usernames, handles, what have you, are Stephanie Miller Coach, which is one word. So I am passionate about helping other writers gain clarity, consistency, and confidence in their writing, especially at the beginning stages when they feel they have a message or a story to tell and they're not sure what that looks like. They don't want to call themselves a writer. That's kind of where I lean into helping build that confidence, clarity, and consistency. So I'm there sharing tips, resources, and tools. Also on the other component with the spiritual growth, which is what the Butterfly Blueprint is about, talking about how we are not destined to be caterpillars, but we are destined to be butterflies and what it means to live transformed.
Thank you. Thank you so very much for this conversation, Stephanie. I learned so much from these podcast conversations, and they always are so timely because there's so much of what you had shared that it was like, oh, I needed that. So thank you. Thank you very much for your time. And it was good to see the little one in the background for all of 2 seconds.
Yes. That's my little mini me.
Oh, so thank you so much. And
thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my wonderful conversation with Stephanie Miller. In a way, I'm hoping the sound of rain hitting the roof comes through on the recording. It's one more metaphor to add to this conversation. Butterflies, rain, they can have a metaphoric expression of growth, personal growth. To learn more about Stephanie's book and her services, you can find a link to access her website at pentopaperpress.com/podcast and select the show notes page for this episode. When you follow the Pen to Paper Press podcast on your favorite application or leave a comment, you help to increase the rankings of this podcast. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you prefer to receive future episodes in your inbox, subscribe to the Pen to Paper Press newsletter. Take care, and until next time, keep your pen to paper and write. Your words have power. Your story matters. Bye for now.